I never thought I'd walk into my parents' house on Thanksgiving and see my sister sitting on the couch with my fiancé, their fingers tangled together like they belong that way.
My stomach dropped. The room spun. My own sister. My own fiancé. Betrayal burned through me like fire. I turned and walked out. No screaming. No crying. Just silence.
Behind me, I heard my mother call my name, but I didn't stop. I got in my car, drove to the nearest fast food place, and ate the saddest Thanksgiving meal of my life. That's when I decided I was done with all of them. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Jessica, and I grew up in a close family in the suburbs of Denver. I had a sister, Rachel, and we were inseparable. Our parents loved us, and we spent every holiday together, laughing, eating, and making memories.
I thought we were unbreakable. Then I met Daniel.
He was charming, funny, and swept me off my feet during my sophomore year at the University of Colorado. We dated for years, and last December, he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. I said yes, tears streaming down my face. We planned a summer wedding and dreamed of building our life together in Denver. But in April, everything shattered. I came home early from work one day and found Rachel in my bed, with Daniel. The sheets were tangled.
Their faces froze when they saw me.
I didn't scream.
I didn't cry.
I just turned around, walked out, and packed Daniel's things in trash bags. When he came begging for forgiveness, I threw them on the front lawn. Rachel had the nerve to show up days later, tears in her eyes, saying she and Daniel had fallen in love over the years. She was sorry, but her heart was with him now.
I blocked them both.
At first, my parents took my side. They banned Rachel from family events. I started to heal, throwing myself into work. Then, in early November, my boss called me into her office. "We're opening a new branch in Seattle," she said. "I want you to lead it."
It was a fresh start. A way out. I said yes.
I planned to tell my family at Thanksgiving, spend one last Christmas with them, then leave for Seattle in January.
But Rachel and Daniel had one last betrayal in store. Thanksgiving arrived.
I walked into my parents' house, and there they were, Rachel and Daniel, sitting on the couch like they had every right to be there. My parents looked at me with pity. "Jessica," my mom said softly, "what they did was wrong, but we're a family.
You need to forgive." I looked at my dad. He nodded.
My aunt, my cousins, they all sat closer to Rachel and Daniel, like I was the one who didn't belong. That's when I knew. I was alone. I stood up, walked out, and never looked back. That night, I made my decision. I called my landlord in Seattle and asked if I could move in early. I changed my phone number, blocked my family on everything, and told my boss I wanted to leave immediately. On December 15th, I packed my car and drove to Seattle without a word. Then, last night, I got a message from a new Instagram account, probably my mom. "Jessica, why would you leave without telling us? We miss you. We love you. Please come home for Christmas." I stared at the screen, my fingers shaking. Then I typed my reply. "You only have one daughter now. I'm not family anymore." I blocked the account, locked down my social media, and never looked back. But little did they know, this wasn't the end.
It was just the beginning. I thought Seattle would be my escape. A new city. A new life. No more betrayals. No more heartbreak. I was wrong. The first few weeks were peaceful. My new apartment overlooked the water, and the quiet mornings with just the sound of seagulls made it easier to breathe. Work kept me busy, rebuilding the new branch, hiring a team, proving myself. My boss, Victoria, trusted me, and I wasn't about to let her down. Then, one rainy afternoon in January, my boss came knocking. I was scrolling through my phone when a message popped up, an unknown number. "Jessica, it's Mom. Please call me. Rachel's sick." My fingers froze. Sick? Good. She deserved it. I deleted the message and blocked the number. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. That night, I did something stupid. I looked Rachel up on social media.
Her profile was public, and what I saw made my blood boil. There they were, Rachel and Daniel, smiling in front of a Christmas tree, her hand resting on her stomach. A baby bump.
She was pregnant. With his child. The same man who had proposed to me.
I threw my phone across the room, tears burning my eyes.
How could they be happy? How could they just move on like they hadn't destroyed me? I needed air.
I grabbed my coat and stormed out into the cold Seattle night, walking until my feet ached.
That's when I saw him. Daniel.
Standing outside a coffee shop, laughing with a blonde woman. His hand was on her waist, his face close to hers. I ducked behind a building, my heart pounding. What was he doing in Seattle? Then it hit me, he wasn't with Rachel.
He was cheating. Again.
A slow, bitter smile spread across my face.
Karma was coming for them. And I was going to help.
The next morning, I marched into Victoria's office. I need a favor, I said. She looked up, surprised.
What's going on? I took a deep breath.
I need to find out everything about a man named Daniel Carter. His job, his finances, his secrets.
Victoria raised an eyebrow. This personal?
Very. She leaned back in her chair, studying me. Then she nodded.
Give me a week.
7 days later, Victoria handed me a file. Inside was everything: Daniel's job at a failing startup, his mounting debt, and most importantly, proof he'd been cheating on Rachel for months.
With multiple women. Including the blonde I'd seen him with.
I laughed, a cold, hollow sound. Rachel had thrown away our sisterhood for a man who didn't even love her. Now, I just had to wait. Because the best revenge?
Letting them destroy themselves.
A month later, my phone buzzed with a news alert.
Local startup collapses amid fraud scandal. Daniel's company. I smiled.
Then, another message, this time from an old family friend.
Jessica, you need to see this.
Attached was a photo of Rachel in a hospital bed, pale and frail. The caption read, "Diagnosed with lupus. Fighting for my baby. Please pray for us."
And standing beside her? Daniel. With his arm around the blonde.
My smile widened.
This wasn't over. Not even close.
The hospital photo haunted me. Rachel looked so small in that bed, hooked up to machines, her skin nearly as white as the sheets. The lupus was attacking her body fast, the doctors said.
And with the stress of pregnancy, she was fighting for her life. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her.
The other part remembered her hands all over Daniel in my bed. I threw myself into work, refusing to think about it.
But fate had other plans.
One evening in March, Victoria invited me to dinner at an upscale seafood restaurant downtown. "There's someone I want you to meet," she said with a knowing smile.
That's when I saw him. Mark.
Victoria's older brother, tall, dark-haired, with the kind of warm smile that made my defenses crumble. A successful cardiologist who'd just moved back to Seattle. "Jessica," he said, shaking my hand.
"I've heard amazing things." His grip was firm. His eyes never left mine.
For the first time in months, my heart raced for a good reason. Meanwhile, Rachel's life was unraveling. Through a mutual friend who I'd sworn to secrecy, I learned Daniel had drained their joint accounts. He'd stopped visiting her in the hospital, claiming work stress. Then came the final blow. A frantic midnight call from my mother, the first time she'd reached me since I'd left. "Jessica, please," she sobbed. "Rachel's alone. Daniel took their baby and left town with that woman from his office. The lupus is getting worse and she—" I hung up. Let her rot, I thought. But that night, staring at my ceiling, I saw Rachel's face. Not the smug girl who stole my fiancé, but the little sister who used to sneak into my bed during thunderstorms.
I hated that I still cared. The next morning, Mark texted me. "Coffee tomorrow?
There's this place near the pier with killer cinnamon rolls." I hesitated, then replied, "Only if you're paying." His response came instantly. "For you? Always." A flutter in my chest. Danger. I wasn't ready to trust again. But maybe I could try. That weekend, As I sat across from Mark laughing at his terrible pirate impression, my phone buzzed. A news alert. Local man arrested in fraud scheme. Infant taken into state custody. Daniel's mugshot glared up at me. The article said he'd been caught using fake documents to flee the country with his girlfriend and Rachel's 1-year-old daughter. The baby had been found unharmed at a motel. My hands shook. Mark noticed. Everything okay? I showed him the article. His jaw tightened. That's your ex-fiancée. And my niece. Without hesitation, Mark grabbed his keys. Let's go.
Where? To get your family.
The drive to the state welfare office was silent except for the pounding rain against the windshield. My fingers dug into my knees as Mark navigated Seattle's slick streets. You don't have to do this, I said for the 10th time.
Mark kept his eyes on the road.
Yes, I do. When we arrived, the social worker eyed us suspiciously.
You're the aunt?
I nodded, my throat tight. The moment they brought out the baby, tiny, wrapped in a hospital blanket, with Rachel's big eyes, my resolve shattered.
Her name was Lily.
As I held her for the first time, she grabbed my finger with surprising strength. A wave of protectiveness crashed over me so hard it stole my breath.
Mark's phone rang. His face darkened.
It's the hospital. They've been trying to reach you.
Rachel looked like a ghost when we arrived. Hollow cheeks.
Oxygen tubes.
But her eyes flew open when she saw me holding Lily.
You came, she croaked.
I set the baby carefully in her arms. Not for you. For her.
Tears streamed down Rachel's face as she examined every inch of her daughter.
Daniel left us, she whispered. Took everything. Even my wedding ring. Mark cleared his throat.
Actually, he pulled out his phone, showing a news update. Daniel had been denied bail. His girlfriend had turned state's evidence, revealing he'd stolen from Rachel's medical fund. Rachel's breath hitched. Why are you helping me?
I looked at Lily's sleeping face. Because she deserves better than what we got.
2 days later, as I sorted through baby supplies at my apartment, Mark appeared with a stuffed giraffe.
For Lily, he said, setting it on the counter. Then hesitated.
And this is for you.
A key.
My place has a nursery, he said quietly.
I bought it hoping, well, if you and Lily need space. My eyes burned.
We barely know each other.
You knew enough to call me when it mattered. His hand covered mine.
Let someone help you, Jessica.
I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But then my phone rang. Unknown number.
I answered, and froze. Daniel's voice slithered through the receiver. You think you've won?
I'm still her father. I'll get out. And when I do...
Mark snatched the phone and growled one word.
Try.
Then he crushed me against his chest as I finally let myself break. The courtroom smelled like old paper and regret. I sat stiffly in the front row, Lily asleep in my arms, as the judge read Daniel's sentence.
5 years for fraud.
2 for child endangerment.
Not enough.
Beside me, Rachel trembled in her wheelchair, still weak from the lupus flare-up. But when Daniel glared at her, she didn't look away. You'll never touch her again, she whispered.
Daniel smirked. I'll appeal. And when I get out... Slam.
The judge's gavel cut him off. Mr. Carter, I suggest you focus on serving your time. As they led him away in chains, I expected to feel triumph.
Instead, I just felt tired.
That night, while Victoria babysat Lily, Rachel and I sat on my balcony overlooking Seattle's skyline. I need to tell you something, she said suddenly.
The wine glass froze halfway to my lips.
Daniel came onto me first, she blurted.
That night you walked in on us? It wasn't the first time.
He'd been manipulating me for months.
My stomach twisted.
Why didn't you tell me?
He said you'd never believe me. She wiped her eyes. And he was right. I was the little sister who always copied you. Who always wanted what you had. The admission hung between us like a storm cloud. Then, thud. Inside, Lily started crying. We both stood at the same time.
6 months later, I stood in a white dress on a sunlit beach, Mark's hand steady around mine.
You sure about this? He murmured as the officiant spoke.
I glanced over his shoulder at our makeshift family, Victoria holding Lily's tiny flower girl basket, Rachel in remission and smiling, even my parents sitting awkwardly in the back row.
I've never been more sure, I said.
When we kissed, Lily clapped her chubby hands and shouted Mama, her first word.
The guests laughed. I cried. Epilogue.
The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Daniel Carter, parole denied. I tucked it into Lily's baby book, right beside her adoption papers. Then I carried my daughter outside, where Mark was grilling burgers and Rachel was untangling Christmas lights, 3 months early because Lily loves the colors. As Lily squealed at a passing seagull, I finally understood. The best revenge wasn't fire.
It was light.